morning, VC. Today we're not coming to you from the studio, but we are here in my listening room in beautiful Calabasas, California. Some people have asked, some people have wondered, what is your system? So today I'm just gonna go through really quick, make a super quick video. So I listen in this room entirely to vinyl. I don't have a CD player, I don't own a CD player, I don't have an SA CD player, I don't stream music in here. So it starts out with the source of a V.P.I Prime. It's the upgraded version from Upscale Audio here in LA. It has the Nordost inner wiring and some upgraded feet, which work really, really well, like isolate it super well. I've thrown other feet on it, but I think the V.P.I feet are actually the best. And then for the cartridge, I have a Hana Umami Red. Just a beautiful sounding cartridge. I had gone to a couple different friends' houses who had them. I had a Sumiko Starling for a while, and I felt like it was just getting a little long in the tooth. And so I was gonna send it in to get it re-tipped, and they said it was gonna take like months to do it. So I got a Hana ML, black one, and I put that on, and that was just, I mean, it was cheap. It was basically a cheap cartridge that I got to have during the time I was getting the Sumiko re-tipped. And it just didn't sound good to me. It never sounded great. Big orchestral works would get distorted. It just wasn't up to par, really. And so then they were having a deal where I could trade that cartridge in for essentially the $1,000 that I paid for it against an Umami Red. So instead of paying $4,000 for that, I got it for $3,000. I like it better than the Sumiko. I had a Koetsu a couple years ago. I like it better than that. Couldn't recommend that cartridge more. It's so beautiful sounding. So then out of the turntable, we go into the Manley Chinook Phono stage. This also is the upgraded version that gives you the +5 dB in both settings. I think you can go from 40 to 45 dB or 55 to 60. So it has 4 tubes in it. They're ECC 88s or E88 CCs. It shipped with some gold lions in it, which sounded pretty good. But then I got some new old stock Telefunken E88 CCs, and those are the best sounding tubes I've heard probably ever. So airy and transparent, and they just give a beautiful tubey sound, but it's not bloomy. It doesn't emphasize the bass or bloat the bass. It just gives it that really beautiful classic tube sound without overemphasizing in any direction. You can still get them from Upscale Audio. There's still a little bit of that stash left. I will say they are not cheap, but they are still available. And that's one thing I look at getting any tube equipment. I've had multiple tube amplifiers and preamp sections, so if you spend X amount of dollars on like a phono stage, then I always assume that I'm going to spend half of that price or something around there in tubes to really get the best tubes for it. And I will say also that the tubes it came with sound great. They sound just fine. Gold Lion, Genelex Gold Lion tubes, I think are probably the best tubes currently being produced today. So out of there, this preamp amp situation is kind of temporary and it's a little weird, but I figured I might as well talk about it because it's what I'm using. So I'm using the Hegel H390 as a preamp only. I had 2 Macintoshes in a row, and I also had a Luxman and an Accuphase before that. And towards the tail end of having the Macintosh MA352, I just got so tired of that house Macintosh sound, the kind of syrupy, warm, laid back. I just wanted more detail out of everything, especially listening to the classical records. The Macintosh does sort of even everything out, I think, in a way where it's like, you know, you can have a record that sounds not so perfect, but it will make it sound a little more listenable. But I don't think it ever really let the beauty and the perfection of the world's best pressings shine. And again, I had heard this amp a couple of times through a couple of friends. Actually, I went to Michael Johnson's house once, and he had a Hegel H390, and I just bought one, and it was so great to go from that mushy Macintosh sound into the Hegel sound, which is thin, it's bright, it's like the exact opposite of a Macintosh. Like, I couldn't imagine 2 polar opposite sounding amplifiers. And so I was really happy that I got the Hegel, because it broke me off of that other tube. I had horn speakers, I had big clip speakers then also. And just the clarity that the Hegel has is really, I think, its most impressive quality. I mean, I think it's far from being a reference amplifier of any kind, but it's a nice home amp, integrated amplifier. I think, without getting too nerdy into the details or whatever, because of the thinness of it, and it doesn't really have any weight to it on the bottom end, it's really fast and really punchy, and you get a really great separation out of it because nothing is bulky or heavy. It's just like a fast moving amplifier. It's great. I think where the Hegel really goes wrong is in its power section. And so sometime after that, I got this integrated amplifier, which is a musical Fidelity M8X1. And this is a fantastic integrated amplifier. This is like a heavy, I think the Hegel weighs like 30 pounds or something. This is over 100. Huge heat sinks over here. And it's rated 870 watts into 4 ohms. And I have these 4 ohm speakers. And it is just powerful. It's a powerful amplifier. And I have a big room, you know, so my room is 27 feet that way. It's 16 feet this way with 16-foot ceilings. And to give an effortless, natural, organic sound in this room that fills the space and sounds realistic and lifelike, life size, life depth, you just need a lot of power in a space like this. Beautiful sounding amp. I would say this amp, it has a little bit of what I was describing earlier in that Macintosh sound, like it's a little syrupy in the preamp section. And so that's why I'm using the Hegel with the musical Fidelity. The musical Fidelity on its own is brilliant. I mean, it's a much better sounding amp than the Hegel or the Macintosh or whatever. So really what's going on now is I still had the Hegel laying around, and I'm just sort of hunting for a preamp, maybe an old Mark Levinson or a Krell or something that really is gonna marry well with this. And, you know, I'm just trying to keep it short. Like, I'm not doing a gear review or anything. I'm just giving you little thoughts about what I think about these components. I'm not really interested in doing in-depth gear reviews about really any of this stuff. Just letting you know what I play records through. Then over here, which you can't see, I have a Rel T7X. It's barely on. A lot of music doesn't even hit it, where I have it rolled off at around 30 hertz, 35, something like that. These infinity speakers that I have, a lot of speakers say they're full range speakers, and that is just not true. But these truly can go down to like 30 hertz or anything. So it's just really where that crossover is coming, where the roll off is coming, 12 dB per octave or whatever. I just have that sub coming up a little bit so that it flattens out that curve down in like the lowest octave. You don't even really hear it unless someone's really playing a double bass open, or electronic music will have frequencies that low with a lot of undertones. And I just use the high output connection running off of the speaker taps. And all of the cabling that I have is Kimber cable. I think I have one Audio Quest in there. I have just normal power cords, and I will just say one time here and never say it again. All of the cables matter. They will all give you a different sound. Generally, the more you spend on them, the more refined and better they're going to sound. My speaker cables are Nordost Baldur bi-wire cables, flat, really transparent, really nice sounding cable. And so for the power cords, I have other power cords, Audio Quest, Pangea, those types of things. And on each component, to me, it's adding a little bit of bloom and kind of a little extra bass in there, which I don't like. And the cable running out of the musical Fidelity is a C19, so it's not a normal C13 or whatever. I will eventually upgrade these cables as soon as I can find some that don't add any more weight to the system and really would open up more of the air. I have a small power conditioner, power filter. It has filtered and unfiltered plugs in it, so you can run it straight or they can go through the filters. And again, you can change the whole sound of your system by switching your plugs into a filtered or an unfiltered socket. It really will change the sound. In this house, I have really good power. When I used to have it in the room over there, this other room is an extension, so it had a dedicated line, and it's basically a brand new room. This one has the normal electricity, and I feel like it works fine. If I run anything out of more this side of the house that's closer to the kitchen, the dishwasher, things like that can add a little DC buzz on the top of your line, so everything's getting plugged from this side from the newer circuits. I will also say as quickly as I possibly can that I have everything set up against the outside wall, and I mean the outside wall of the house. So, this is drywall, insulation, plywood, plaster. I have a concrete slab floor with hardwood on top, and that gives me a really solid foundation. The thing about the walls, if you're listening to music, let's say you're upstairs, or you're in a center room, so you have drywall, hollow space, drywall, open room, your system's never really gonna sound great in that context, It's not gonna sound great really if you're on the second floor and you just have flooring that's untreated, unpadded, all of that. If you have a basement underneath and you have just hardwood floor on top of plywood with a huge box underneath of it, it's never gonna sound great. So that's why the stereo is here. It's on solid ground, it's against solid walls. If you go all the way along this wall, which the wall that it's on, the room is 16 feet, but it's definitely closer to 45, 50 feet if you look at the whole length of that wall. That's all the outside of the house. The walls here and here also are outside of the house. So I have nothing that's just booming through hollow drywall, and that helps a lot. This whole side of the room right here, I'll show you later, is just all records on shelves. Some people like to say these things don't matter, you can couple or you can decouple or you can change your cables or your tubes or whatever, and the way I look at it is it's no one thing is gonna take your system over the top. You know, it needs to be a holistic, synergistic thing where everything is working to complement everything else, even as far as, you know, the room. The room may be the most important part of the whole thing. I had these big speakers in this room over here, and I moved them inch by inch over the whole thing over the course of like a few months, and it never sounded great, and so I moved the whole system. And you know, there is something to be said about speaker setup and positioning in smaller rooms where you really can get them in a certain way to where you're using the standing waves and the bounce of everything to come back to the listening spot to sort of amplify frequencies, which can lead to a good sound. But I also just think that's a fake sound in a way. You know, I'm not really hearing the speakers anymore. I'm hearing the room and how it's coming back at me. The one thing I will say about speakers, placement, sound stage, depth, all of that, I really believe that if you want an accurate, lifelike representation of the recording, then you need to be able to replicate the space that musicians would occupy when they made that recording. So, you know, let's say I'm listening to Bill Evans' Trio. You know, could I fit a grand piano, a trap kit, and a double bass in 16 feet by 9 feet? Yeah, I could. So it can project that image out. If you have smaller speakers in a smaller room and they're up against the wall, you can get in the near field and it can sound really cool, but you're just not going to get that lifelike presentation. And look, while I was filming, the FedEx truck came, brought this by. I ordered this yesterday afternoon and it came. Let's open it up and take a look. Look at that. ZZ motherfucking Top. I love ZZ Top, man. Alright, and then just to finish it off, the speakers themselves are Infinity IRS Sigmas. These are by far the best speakers I've ever had. They sound so incredible. I think that whole era of Artie Nudell designed Infinity speakers are among the best speakers ever made. So these have a 12-inch woofer, 6-inch mid-range, which are both cone paper drivers. And then for the upper mid and the treble, they have their own ribbon systems that are called an EMIM and an EMIT. And the clarity of the treble and the highs and the airiness out of these is so incredible. And they're dipole, so it goes backwards and forwards. And the speakers themselves, the construction, I've had a lot of other speakers over the years. These are some of the best built speakers I've ever seen. They weigh just under 200 pounds each. They're really hard to get in here. So in the construction, they're basically, the front baffle is 3-inch thick HDF, so it's not MDF. And then around the edges over here is just solid wood. And basically each section of it, each driver section has its own built-in enclosure. So it's really like 3 separate systems stacked on top of each other. And you know, they are so solid. You don't hear any wood, you don't hear any boom or vibration coming out of the sides or the back of these speakers. Everything is pushing forward, except for the dipoles on top, which are going backwards as well. And they're rated 4 ohm. I mean, they definitely dip down to 2 in dynamic sections. They're so powerful, so punchy. And just from having so many speakers and amps over the years, tube, solid state, hybrids, horn speakers, everything. The one analogy that I like to use is you have wattage, you have voltage, you have sensitivity. And these things, if you think about it like water, you know, you could have, let's say, a really high sensitivity speaker and a really low wattage amp is kind of like having a small amount of water that then goes through a big pipe and kind of trickles out of a faucet. And that's one sound, and that's a very gentle sound, that's very nice. But a system like this, when you have 870 watts, high voltage, super low sensitivity, I think these speakers are 87 sensitivity. So what you have is a large pool of water going through a very small pipe with a ton of pressure behind it. So when the dynamics hit in the music, it can really push a lot really quickly. And I think that's just the difference. If I had 2 setups, I probably would have a 10 watt single-ended amp and some horn speakers, and I would just listen to old Riverside albums and stuff like that, which sound really nice in that format. For large orchestral works, I really believe you need power to really have it translate. And that's pretty much it. I'm not into weird tweaks. I don't change all the footers on everything, and I do have some footers on the phono stage just because I want to make sure that no extraneous vibrations are going into the tubes and getting them to be microphonic. I keep my speaker cables off the floor. I use crystals, quartz crystals. I have quartz crystals on top of the transformers. You can research that on your own. I'm not going to go down that path. But I will say I think it helps. So that's that. That's my 2 cents on things. It's a generic rundown of my system. And you know, I live in Los Angeles, so there's 7 hi-fi stores here. I have many friends who have insane systems, and I would say this system sounds better than any system I've heard, let's say under 100 grand, like until you get into the really crazy VTLs and Nagras. And I heard those Okora speakers that are carved out of solid granite, incredible. But just for having a reasonably priced setup, it just sounds so beautiful to me, to my subjective opinion of what audio should sound like. It hits all of those things, and I just couldn't be happier. And that's that for this video. I think I'm going to do another video. I don't know if I'll attach it to this or I'll cut it up into 2 and drop the other one tomorrow or something. But I have this room over here which stores, so all my records are here. And then over here in this next room is kind of like the newest things I've acquired over the last 1.5 years or so. Couple piles from collections that I've gotten, and I'm just going to flip through those. They're all organized by label, and you get a sneak peek at what's coming in some shootouts and reviews, etc. Okay, bye-bye.